This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today, and we are joined by Jose Perez. He is the publisher of the Latino Journal. And I want to take us back to the 60s and 70s. 1962, the first member of the Assembly who was of Latino descent was elected. In fact, two that year. In 1970, the first Latino was elected to the Senate. We're now in 2016. There are 22 members of the Latino caucus, and both the Speaker of the Assembly and the Senate Pro Tem are Latino men. Boy, what a difference 5 or 6 decades makes.
Yes, and what it shows is that California, its government leadership structure is catching up to the demographics.
But at the same time, it also shows that, of course, demographics matter, but clearly these men were elected by bodies that were not even majority Latino. They were elected by bodies that were majority non-Latino.
Correct. And so well, what that means is that there's a lot of upward mobility that's happening in the Latino community. It's growing out of its own community and being a part of a greater community. And so if you look at California, it's got populations from all over the world.
Sure.
And so Latinos happen to be a very large chunk of those. But there's no question that the up-and-coming Latinos, especially those who choose to get into civic engagement, realize that no man and no community is an island.
Well stated. And when I think about the Latino population in California, as you know, it is now the plurality population.
Right.
There's no population that has more members than Latinos, not a majority, but a plurality. That happened in 2013, beating out Anglos or those of European descent. But like you said, no man is an island. And what these men, Anthony Rendon and Kevin DeLeon, did very effectively is built coalitions to create their ascension.
Correct.
Tell me more about the Latino movement kind of growing up, I guess you could say, and building coalitions to the point that they're running, you know, the two houses of the state legislature.
Right. I think a lot of it has to do with, interestingly, like all immigrant populations coming to America, there's a point where the communities start really with the most probably the lowest paying jobs, and there's a lot of organization, and there's the entrepreneurs that filter out of there who then begin to build their own companies.
And think about Mr. Rendon and Mr. DeLeon. Their parents were not of means.
Right.
And these two men have risen.
Exactly. And so I can personally relate to that.
Same.
I'm part of the generation myself with my parents coming from Mexico, and very humble beginnings, and then, you know, going to the university and working for government and now being an entrepreneur for 20 years, you know, you get to see things really from more of a mainstream American perspective.
At the same time, sir, while the Latino community, while California is celebrating the ascension of Mr. Rendon and Mr. DeLeon, there are only 22 members in the Latino caucus out of 120 members of the state legislature. The Latino population is almost 40% of the state. I'm not that good at math, but 22 is not 40% of 120. Now, playing a numbers game isn't always what we need to do, but there's something there. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And so part of it is that the Latino community is still developing itself. You've got a large young population that, quite frankly, is just entering the voting age. And then you have another part of the population that's still immigrant, and they're part of them are legal, part of them are not.
But let's talk about those that are legal and eligible. I recall during the era, not too long ago, when the Affordable Care Act went into play. And in the early days of the sign-up of the Affordable Care Act, Latinos were not signing up. And there was a lot of concern, why is this not happening? And some research was done, anecdotal and otherwise, and there was a suggestion that Latinos, especially those from Central and South America, didn't want to get involved with the government. They had come from oppressive regimes. They didn't want to get involved. It was not until the Mujeres, the head mama of the family, said, sign up for Obamacare, when that happened. So are the Mujeres starting to say to their children and grandchildren, register to vote?
You know, it's interesting. Women clearly are very strong figures in our households in the Latino community. And so I think you're absolutely right. If you take a look at what happened with Gloria Molina when she first
Sure.
got elected to the LA County. It was the mothers who were doing tamale fundraisers
right.
and pulling resources together to elect the first Hispanic supervisor in LA County. So yeah, our women clearly are, very powerful leaders in not only in the household, but in developing leadership in the community.
We think about Cristina Garcia. She is the assistant majority floor leader. There's no doubt that there are many Latinas doing extremely well in the state of California, electively and otherwise. I want to shift gears a bit and talk about Latino turnout, though, because it's hard to deny that Latino turnout has been disappointing over the years. We know Alex Padilla, the Secretary of State, a man of Latino descent, is looking to drive turnout overall, but he has been working within Latino communities. Could this be the year? Could 2016 be the year where Latinos vote, at least at their registered voting levels?
Brad, I got to tell you, I've been around for a long time around this area. I used to teach political science once at Sacramento City College.
Who would have thought?
And I can tell you that I've never seen so much synergy and interest by the Latino community to be more proactive in its leadership development, starting with voter education programs, voter registration.
The organization Hope.
Oh, absolutely. And
very
so,
successful with women.
Yeah, and so you have a lot more engagement. In the Sacramento area, for example, you've got LULAC, who's they're doing a lot of voter registration efforts. They're singling out targeted communities that, quite frankly, need more development and participation.
Well, let me ask you, and I'm going to make a presumption, that the nominees for president are Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Just play with me for a second. If that's the case, does the historic nature of Hillary's nomination drive Latinos to the polls? Does Donald Trump's rhetoric drive Latinos to the polls to vote for Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, that's a really interesting dynamic that's going on right there. As you know, in California, at one time we had a governor that was up for re-election and was not doing so well. And so he chose to bring in Proposition 187 that basically,
Pete Wilson.
that basically divided Californians between basically the Latino community and the non-Latino community. And he won. And Trump, amazingly, in my opinion, he's using a very similar tactic.
But while Mr. Wilson won, many political scientists like yourself have said that that was the beginning of the end of a competitive Republican Party.
Exactly.
That's not me saying it. This is what political scientists are saying.
Oh, no. I mean, if you look at what's happening in California right now, we don't have a Republican statewide officer. And so there's no question that the Republican Party is definitely in danger of going extinct if this divisiveness and hatred is part of the agenda.
A Cuban American is at the top of the Republican ticket. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. How do Central and South Americans who live in Los Angeles, do they warm up to a Cuban American?
I think that Marco Rubio is probably much more acceptable from just the campaign rhetoric that we hear.
Although
because
he's flipped on immigration. He was part of the Gang of Eight. Now he's coming out against his own
but he makes it a
positions.
point to speak Spanish in the forums, and he sounds like a family member.
Does Mr. Cruz speak Spanish?
No, he doesn't. Yeah. Not at the same level. Right. And so it's going to be really interesting to see. This is going to be the funnest national election ever.
His name is Jose Perez. He is the publisher of the Latino Journal. You can find it at latinojournal.net. My name is Brad Pomerance from Sacramento. This is Local Edition.